Could the Terps add Chaz Lanier?
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, video content creator for 247 Sports and InsideMarylandSports.com, and host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Chaz Lanier could be the final piece for Maryland basketball. I was going to start with some spring game football stuff today, but I really wanted to talk about this kid, Chaz Lanier, because I think this kid has the chance to elevate this Maryland team into, we're flirting around the top 25 to boom. We look like we could be a potential top 15, top 12, top 10 maybe team in all of college basketball next year. I think if we add this Chaz Lanier kid, I think we have a shot at doing that. And I think we have a chance to be one of the best teams in the country next year. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm completely wrong. And Maryland basketball looks like we did last year, or we look worse, and the pieces don't mesh and it doesn't come together. But if Kevin Willard does his jobs and the players project like I think they're going to project, and like a lot of other experts think they're going to project, then this Maryland basketball team has a chance to be something special next year if they can add this Chaz Lanier kid. Even without Chaz Lanier, it's still in a really good spot. But we do have one more spot on this team. We have one more spot to add a transfer. It's our last spot, and I think Chaz Lanier would be an awesome guy to add to this team. To be completely honest with you guys, I hadn't heard of this kid before I did some research about him yesterday, because some of the Maryland people on Twitter were saying that Maryland could be in play for Chaz Lanier and that he could definitely possibly become a Terrapin, and we'll see what happens. I don't know how true that is, but I do think there's a shot, and I do think it's a big enough shot for me to come on here and talk about it. I also heard that Tennessee really likes this kid as well, which is a good sign. Tennessee's a good basketball program. If they want to recruit, if they want to pick somebody up, it's probably a good sign. But after doing some research on him, this kid's an elite player. High-level player, one of the better players in the transfer portal right now, one of the better players I think could be like one of the better players in the Big Ten next year potentially if he gets added to this Maryland basketball roster. And I really do think he could elevate us to be a team that's it's tough because you don't want to say a top 10 team in the country, especially after what we looked like last year. But I'm not here to come on here and say some takes that are kind of like, oh, like iffy. Like, I really believe that, like, if he joins our team, this Terrapin team has depth. We have shooting. We have scoring. We have maybe the best front court in the entire country. Chaz Lanier could elevate us to a top 10 team in the country and maybe the favorites in the Big Ten. And that might not show early on in terms of the preseason rankings. I'm sure some people will respect us because I've seen other websites already respect us and say that Maryland might be a top 25 team and that we've had one of the best off seasons and all that stuff. But some people aren't going to understand the value of the players that we added. But once the season starts, people would start to realize that we could potentially be one of the better teams. I think the guys that really know basketball, that really do this as their jobs, some of those top analysts, they're going to talk about it, but it might be quiet until the start of the season. But that might be good because remember last year we came in with expectations were high and it didn't live up to where they should have been, and we didn't live up to the expectations that we put up for ourselves being a top 3 team in the Big Ten. And I think some of those expectations could be really high for the Maryland fan base, but it might be a little bit lower in terms of the rest of the country. But I also could be wrong about that. People could recognize the talent that we brought in, even without Chaz Lanier. But if we add Chaz Lanier, I think he's a really good player for us, and I like the fit. He is a guard who can score the ball and went absolutely crazy last year, had one of the better seasons in all of college basketball in terms of guard play and what he did last year for North Florida. That's where he comes from, North Florida. And what he put up in terms of his scoring and then in terms of his percentages, in terms of efficiency, you love to see it. And it's a guy that, like, there's no reason why you wouldn't want to add a kid like this. This year played 32 games, averaged 33 minutes. So he was playing a lot of minutes, playing most of the games, similar to kind of a Jameer Young type of role, I think, for North Florida, was clearly their best player. But he averaged 19.7 points per game. So basically 20 points per game. So we would be adding a guy that can score the ball, a guy that can get to the bucket, a guy that can shoot the ball, and a guy that can create his own shot. And I think that's tremendously important. I don't think you can have enough of those guys. I think it's a little bit different in the NBA, where sometimes you can have too many stars and there's only one ball. But in college basketball, it's like you just want as many good construction, and you got to have some different types of players. But I don't think like adding Chaz Lanier, a guy that's going to be, I don't want to say ball dominant, but a guy that definitely will have the ball in his hand a lot, isn't going to hurt our team right now. I don't think that hurts our team, even though we have guys like Jacoby Gillespie and Rodney Rice and Deshaun Harris-Smith. And of course, we're going to need to get the bigs the ball. But I think if everyone's unselfish, adding a guy like this, even though he's a 20-point per game guy, I think really could help us. And I think that could really help replace the production of Jameer Young. But of course, we already have Jacoby Gillespie, who was the top point guard transfer in this class. And he also can score the ball, and he's huge in replacing Jameer Young. If you pair these two together, our backcourt could possibly be the best in the Big Ten. And then our front court with Derik Queen, I'm going to talk a little bit more about later, and all the impressive things he's been doing, could be also the best in the Big Ten. It's a pretty cool time to be a Maryland Terrapins fan. But he was also efficient with his numbers. That's also why I love him. 51% from the field, really good spot for him. And then 44% from the three-point line. That's a high percentage from the three-point line. And after I watched Maryland basketball absolutely just struggle last year shooting the ball, having guys that can shoot the ball at that type of level, it's a pretty cool thing to see. Even when we're bringing in Rodney Rice, who's an elite shooter, and we brought in Miguel, who's an elite shooter. I just get excited talking about this team, because just after the disappointment, this team really has a chance to do something special. And with the struggles that we had, back to the point, the struggles that we had with the three-point percentage, seeing a guy that shot 44% from three is a really cool thing to bring in. And then also 88% from the free throw line and nearly averaged 5 boards. He's also a good rebounding guard. So he's almost a 40, 50, 90 guy. You guys know that talk about 40, 50, 90s, and that means you're above 40% from the three-point line, you're above 50% from the field, and you're above 90% from the free throw line. But he's at 88% from the free throw line, which is obviously still very good and in a very good spot overall. But another thing that's kind of crazy about this kid is how much he's improved. In 2022-2023, he played 19 minutes a game. His field goal percentage was 45%. His three-point percentage was 39%. Somehow his free throw shooting was 100%. So I guess he didn't miss a free throw in the 2022-2023 season. But he only scored 4.7 points per game. So the way his role expanded as a player is a pretty cool thing. So I think it's good, because he's had days where he's been kind of a role player, hasn't been the star of the team, and then he's also been the star. And I think that meshes well with this Maryland basketball team, because I don't think he's going to be a guy that would come into Maryland basketball and average 20 points per game. I don't think that's what we need. I think we have too much depth. I think we have too many players. I think we have too many high-level players for a guy like this to come in and average like 20 points per game. But we also would love his scoring, maybe 14, 15 points per game or something like that, maybe 13, just with the depth that we have. But he knows how to play a role, and I think there's a balance to that, having a guy that had a really high-level season and then another season where he was still a solid player and was pretty efficient and shot good numbers, but he wasn't some star of the team. And so he knows how to play both spots, which I think is going to be important for Maryland basketball, because some games we might need him to go for 20 if we got him, and other games we might need him to only score 5 or 6 or 7. And I think that's a good spot for him to be for the Maryland basketball team. And then apparently he is also friends with Jacoby Gillespie, I heard, which could be a factor in Maryland basketball being a choice for him, and him deciding on Maryland basketball being the best place for him. I don't know all about that, and I don't know exactly how much stock to put into that, but apparently Jacoby Gillespie is kind of friends with him. And so that's another part that could be a big deal. And that could help because I think you have to start those two in the backcourt. And then I don't know who would start at the 3. I don't know if you would put Rodney Rice in there. I don't know if you would put Deshaun Harris-Smith in there. I think that would be a battle for that kind of starting spot. But I would like Jacoby Gillespie and Chaz Lanier to start if Chaz Lanier decided to come back. I think that offers a lot. And then your bench, Miguel, I think is a guy that comes off the bench because he's done it. He won 6th man of the year in his conference. He could obviously be a starter, but I think he wants to come off the bench and play those type of minutes. And so I like the way the roster's shaping up, but we have one more roster spot. This could potentially be a kid that we use it on, and I think it would be a smart thing to try and go after him hard and get him our last roster spots. Now we are going to talk about spring football game. It is on Saturday. I want to go over my top 5 freshmen that I want to see out there. I will talk to you about that after this ad from Monopoly Go and the Gametime app. Okay, well, yeah, I have a competitive side. We all do. And my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is messing with my friends. I can charge them rent on my iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly, but now I can also heist their vaults of riches for myself. And the leaderboards show me who the biggest Monopoly guy is. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in time tournaments and earn huge rewards. So get in on the app and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or the Google Play. Have you ever wanted to go to a game at the last minute, like a Maryland Terrapins game, but finding tickets can be pretty hard? I've been there before. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guaranteed, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's a place to find last-minute tickets and get last-minute seats. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Here are some of the top freshmen that I want to see in the Maryland football spring ball game, and some of those guys that were really highly recruited for Maryland football, some of our top guys. And there's a couple players that I want to see at all different spots of our team that I want to see how they play. And I think they have a chance to be really good players. And some of them I think have a chance to play a lot, but I'm just going to get into it. But quickly, Maryland football spring game on Saturday. I think it's a huge deal. I'm going to talk about it a ton in tomorrow's podcast, talking about the top players I want to see, some of the biggest question marks. So make sure you tune in tomorrow. But let's get into some of the top guys, top freshmen that I want to see that are the future of our program. I'm going to start off with 2 guys in the secondary, starting with Braden Lee, 4-star cornerback who switched from South Carolina. I love Braden Lee's game. I think he's a high-end player, and I want to see what he's about because I watched his film, and he's got some speed. He's got some athleticism. For sure, he can cover. He's been a top player at Flowers for a couple of years now, and he's been one of the better players in the DMV area. I'm interested because of kind of the switch from South Carolina, so I kind of want to see what he's all about. I want to see how much South Carolina is going to miss this kid, but I do think he could potentially push for some minutes early, but a lot of it's going to depend on how the spring game looks, and that's another reason why I want to see him. I think he's a really talented player. There's a reason he was a 4-star kid. I think he's got that twitch and athleticism that you want in the corner. He could be the next great Maryland cornerback that we seem to be getting now. We seem to be getting a top cornerback every single year, and a guy that gets drafted. This year, Tarheeb still was second team All Big Ten. The year before that, we had 2 players get drafted, Deontay Banks and Jacorian Bennett. And Braden Lee could be next in line for a really top-end cornerback for Maryland football. So I want to see what he can do out there and how he looks out there, especially with some of the weaknesses at the cornerback position, just not having a complete roster, or we have a complete roster, but just having a bunch of inexperienced guys back there. I want to see if Braden Lee is potentially a guy that could play right away. Brandon Jacobs, our highest rated recruit this year. I think he's another kid that in the secondary at the safety spot that has a chance to maybe play a little bit of minutes, because I think Dante Trader and Glendon Miller are going to be the clear starters, and those two guys might be the two best players on our defense potentially. Glendon Miller goes back to playing his spot at the safety spot instead of being in the slot, and I think that could help Glendon Miller. He did play really well last year in the slot, but I think he is more of a natural safety. But I think him playing the slot corner is going to help him with safety, just with cover ability when he wants to come up, and you can even put him in the slot if you really need to. But back to Brandon Jacobs, this freshman was recruited by nearly everybody, top 300 recruit, 4-star, 6'4" from Florida. I've been told has all the length and athleticism to really show out, and I want to see what he looks like. He should be a starting safety for one of the teams in the spring ball game, and so I'm interested to see how he looks. I'm interested to see if he really stands out. In my opinion, I want to see if this guy's a dude or not. If this is a guy that he's supposed to be like a future, like you know how Bo Braid has been a really good player for us the last 3 years. I think that's kind of how Brandon Jacobs is supposed to be in terms of quality of player. He's supposed to be a guy that at the end of this we look at, he's going to be an NFL type of guy. He's led our team at the safety spot, and it might not be this year for him, but I do think that in spots you could see him play a little bit, especially if maybe we can't find a slot corner. Maybe you move Glendon Miller up and then move Brandon Jacobs next to Dante Trader at the safety spot. Not something I say happens, but something that could be a possibility. I do like his game, and I do want to see what he can do, especially being our top-rated recruit. Mekhi White, receiver from the Virginia area. He is interesting. Mekhi White's very interesting because of his height and some of that advantage that he gets from being just taller and an athletic guy at 6'3", 6'4". I want to see if he's kind of like fits the mold of the Caden Prather, if he makes a couple of jump ball plays that we aren't expecting. I think this Maryland wide receiver room is looking for guys that are next up. Caden Prather and Ty Felton are both gone next year, and there's some interesting players, younger players in that room, whether it's Ryan Manning, Octavian Smith, Shalik Knotts, or Mekhi White too. I mean, and I want to see how he looks. I want to see if he's the future of our wide receiver room. He was also a highly recruited guy, and just some of that length that he has at 6'4", it's going to be cool to see the type of plays that he can make and the type of player that he is overall. And I think that maybe in spots he could play in the red zone this year with some of that length. I think you just can't teach that size and that jump ball ability. And in high school, he just was just better than everybody. So it was more like clear that he could just outdo everybody and outjump everybody. But now we're in college, just how well will it still translate? How good does he look? And then Ryan Howerton could be the future of our offensive line. He put up a really good showing at the Under Armour All-American game, where it's just they had a week of just doing a bunch of stuff with like different drills and different things like that. And he looked really good according to the reports. It was one of the better offensive linemen there, and it kind of helped him get on just kind of on the radar more. He was a pretty highly recruited guy. He was a 4-star in Rivals, I want to say, but I think he has a chance to be a starter on our offensive line, not this year, but in the next couple of years. And those guys are important because you get a lot of guys in the transfer portal that are going to start on your offensive line. But I think this is a guy that we could just grow up and mold, and a player that could start maybe sooner rather than later on the offensive line. I think he's got the size, he's got the length. I've talked to him, he's got the feet. He's a really cool kid overall, and just having talked to him and interviewing him, I'm excited to see what he can do. He's definitely a highly rated recruit, and I want to see what he looks like on the offensive line. Let's talk about Derik Queen. He continues to perform. What do I kind of expect for him, and how has this summer gone for Derik Queen? I will talk about that after this ad from FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL, And baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. I know some of you guys love these leagues and are watching them. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed on FanDuel. That's $150 win or lose. If you guys like the NBA or NHL, you have to download FanDuel. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all in the app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So Derik Queen continues to perform. Derik Queen, I think he could outdo expectations for Maryland basketball. And you know what I love about bringing all these transfers and all these different things? When we landed Derik Queen, I still thought that he might have to be our best player next year. But now with all the pieces that we have added and even potentially getting Chaz Lanier, and even without Chaz Lanier, I think the pressure on Derik Queen has gone down so much to be some type of elite college basketball, all Big Ten type of player right now. When Julian Reese decided to come back, when we got Jacoby Gillespie, when Deshaun Harris-Smith and his improvements that he could make, and Miguel picking up him and getting Rodney Rice, I think that expectations for Derik Queen are still super high, and we expect him to be a really good player, but he doesn't have to be some type of star. He doesn't have to be like an all Big Ten type of player. He probably doesn't even have to be the freshman of the year for us to be successful. And I think before some of these pickups and the way the roster was looking, I would have argued that Queen would have had to be maybe our best player if Julian Reese didn't come back and we had some troubles with the roster and we weren't getting the guys that we wanted in the portal. But I think the expectations are high, but I think that they're much more attainable now, and I think that he doesn't have to be a star, and I think that's important. But I also want to recognize just what he's doing. A couple of things came out. The Jordan Brand Classic, which is similar to the McDonald's All-American game, where a lot of the top guys that go, they have some practices. He was named the top performer there and then dropped 20 points in the Jordan Brand Classic game, which is a pretty big deal. Those are against some of the best guys. Like I saw a bunch of clips about Cooper Flagg. Of course, they're going to showcase that kid. That kid's pretty special type of player. The kid going to Duke, #1 player that a lot of people think is going to be the #1 pick, not in this year's draft, of course, but the next year's draft. He's special. But Derik Queen put up 20, and he's doing it against some of the top competition, and I like that. And I like that he's able to go to all these different types of things because I think that's going to prepare him for Big Ten basketball, and he's going to be used to going against some of the top guys. And that's why I love kids that come from Montford and that have played at Montford because they've been going against some of the better players. Their practice is definitely highly competitive, maybe more highly competitive than the games that they play. I really like that he's playing well and dropping like 20 at the Jordan Brand Classic. And then, of course, already we talked about him in the McDonald's All-American game. He wins co-MVP. So this kid continues to perform. I think he had 23 points in the McDonald's All-American game. And so he continues to perform, continues to look good. And then I also love that I think we've taken some pressure off of him for being a top-end player with him this year or next year. And then him next to Julian Reese also is going to be special. I think that could be one of the best front courts, and having a front court mate like Julian Reese, you're going to have to figure out how to play together for sure. But having another guy down there like that with Julian Reese and Derik Queen down low, I think that it makes really good stuff for both of them. It's going to be harder to double team them with our guard play now, and those guys are going to eat. And our team is really good spot at guard play, I think. But it's going to run through those two guys overall. But I think he continues to outdo expectations, and I think he'll pass the expectations that we set for him. But I do want to say that I don't think his role has to be as big as I initially thought. Thanks to Kevin Willard bringing in a great roster and able to recruit. We'll see what happens with this Chaz Lanier kid. If we use our last roster spot on this Lanier guy, I will be happy. I'll be more than happy. I think that's a great get, and I think you really couldn't imagine a better offseason for Maryland basketball overall. I just don't think it could get much better than it has already been. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked on Terps.